So I would like to say, you see, I'm very happy to be in the conference of the Buddhists in Germany. And even though I have been catch a cold, you see I'm coughing, but I hope you excuse if, coughing in the between. And then I begin with in a ceremony or prayers of Buddhist, which is beginning with taking the refuge prayers, and then Bodhisattva prayers. After that, some prayers to the Buddha, and then I would like to read, or rather, and saying the Heart Sutra, which is the Panchaparamita Sutra, which is quite important for all different traditions, Mahayana traditions, like Tibet and also in Japan and many places. And it has been translated also many languages. So I was going to say that one. Joju de sumye dijin sheba tamanje ngo juba chuju pambo tonda joju zashi jana pabe kende tamanje ngada denje zawa dan juba jebe bande lama tama nala jesu che sanje la jesu che o chela jesu che kende la jesu che o Samsara Damja Dewa Dan Deve Judan Damba Joje Samsara Damja Dunga Da Dunga Ge Judan Dawa Joje Samsara Damja Dunga Mebe Dawa Dan Mendra Wa Joje Samsara Damja Nyere Chadan Nyeda Deve Dan Nyongla Neba Joje Kange Tenje Anjaba Anjong Gaba meba jeme aba, cheba meba dame aba, owa meba ndrome aba, tade deme denjeme, juba nishi shende aba, tobe sanje manamanje, tamba dela cha zelo, nyende shiwa zeno, kunshi nishi tende kanyen, Rola Pemba Chena Lamshe Nijin Jide Dendru Andaba Kanda Yanda Debe Tuna Namba Kwende Naso Ndison Ba Nyende Chanju Sembe Soche Sanje Jene Yumden La Cha Lo Tobe Chawa Namse Chen Sabjin Chachi Kunga Gundo Sangbe Wese Eta Gune Chola Cha Tse Lo Ma Le Shen Je Guen Je Guen Ju Shen De De Bon Je Me Shen Jang Za La Nguen Na Ma Le Yang Da Chen Ju Be Chom De Ko Je Nen De She Su Su Che Da Tam Ba Zang Je Ne Ha Na Je Ne Chu Su Da Laye chune dawa ye, dejen dage kudu so, sanshi beje jushin medo ajam, rera linshi nyende jemba ande, sanje shendo mede pewa ye, druga namda shinla jeba shu. Masa Chime Shero Pare Maje Menga Namga Ngoni Soso Rare Yeshe Chuye Wa Tusama Jeve Yumla Chasa Lo Jaga Gedu Bangawa De Banjabara Meda Jumdenda Mashara Je Pare Do Chimbe Nyimbo Digedage Tuba Tishina Jamdenda Jebeka Jago Pumbujan La Kanunga Kendi Jambodan Janju Sembe Kendi Jambodan Tabju Jut Te te jumden de samo na wa she jawe chu je nam da je dingen de la nyam ba sho so yang te te jam ju sam ba chamba paba chene song je shiro je paru do chen ba samme che ba ni la na ba da shin pumbo nga bo te da la ra shin je dong ba nam ba da wo te ne san ji je tu chen dan ba she bo jam ju sam ba chamba paba chene song je lan de ge je me so ri je bo kan la shiro je paru do chen ba samme che ba de ba de Chitala cha teke jeme bada chanchu samba chamo papa chine singwon ju ke chidanda ba sharan du de deke jeme so shari bu riji bu kanla la shiro je parida chamba same chaba de bate nida namba tawa jade pumba nga bo teta jana shinje domba namba yanda ba jesu tao su domba wo domba nye su so la domba nye shema ya domba nye le jan su shema yino de shin de chowa dan du shi dan du ji dan namba sheba na domba wo shari bu teta chidan je domba nye de Tini meba ma jeba magawa jama meba jama da jawa jawa meba kawa meba o shiribu teta wena tongpa nila sume chowa mendu shime naba sheba me na me na me shime lime yime sume jame jume rome rechame chu me do meke kame ba na yiji kame yiji naba shibe kongje ba do ya me do mariba sheba me gashi sebe ba do ya me do deshindo dunge wado kunjung wado goba dan lame Yeshime tobame matoba me do sharibu de dawana ju samba no tobame bi chare shiraje pare do chimbal tenji ne de sema jiba me de tobame de chinjin do de shindo no de ngan de be ta shin do so na wa shi be sanje tam je shiraje pare de chimbala de na na me ba yanda ba do be ju de ngom ba zo ba san je so de dawana shiraje pare de chimbe nga ri ba chimbe nga la na me be nga min ba de nyame nga 동해 던져라도 쇼와 제병하면 제변한 담바 셔바지도 싫어져 파르지 치면 nga메바 다다 가데 바라가데 바라 성거데 보데 소 셔르보 전주 선바 다 싫어져 파르도 선바 소몰라라바자 오데네 심는데 땡는데 달라신 전주 선바 좀 파바 전에신 원주라 렉소 시자와지네 렉소라서 리지부 데데신 레지부 데데신에 지다 주제 담마신데 싫어져 파르도 선바 소몰라 제바지데 대신 셔바는 제수 이랑 좀 된데 되게 가전에 쓰다는 마셔는데 보다 자주 선바 좀 후바전에 성공주다 탐제단다면 코데다단 하다면단 하와인다 저서제빈 지대연 좀 된데 저 손발롱 바도도 대단 가den가데 바랑가데 바라 송가데 모레서 대단 가den가데 바랑가데 송가데 모레서 대단 가den가데 바랑가데 송가데 모레 대단 가den가데 바랑가데 송가데 모레서 대단 가den가데 바랑가데 송가데 모레서 대단 가den가데 바랑가데 송가데 모레 대단 가den가데 바랑가데 송가데 모레서 대단 가den가데 바라 송가데 모레서 바바 근저선제 가야데메도 제션 도바조제 메바조제 셰와 자게 바제 메든 베초삼제 신데 고라에 소와 게레동나 자조제와다 메데네 베잔다도와 동반도 제 표준 조제베 자제 된자는데 달쇼 I thought about to talk about the Four Noble Truths. Perhaps title, I don't know, generally, people like very exciting titles. But anyway, Four Noble Truths is very important in Buddhism. And you see, any kind of Buddhism as in this world, as a kind of basic of the Buddhism, and not only basics, but even, whatever Buddhism, they talk about practices, and it is connected with what we call Four Noble Truths. And even when they talk about to reach the goal, it's also connected to the Four Noble Truths. So any kind of Buddhism, whatever, before, this our Geshe was talking about, people want to say, you see, one of them, our way of whatever Buddhism or whatever, this is the highest one or whatever. But you can say, at least the highest Buddhism, whatever you can say, it is connected with the Four Noble Truths. Without the Four Noble Truths, kind of understanding, realization, then you see, it's not even you can get into Buddhism. So that is one of the reasons I would like to introduce, and the Four Noble Truths. So Four Noble Truths, as a Buddhist, if you talk about becoming a Buddhist, somehow that basic of the Four Noble Truths one needs to realize or at least to understand. Same as Four Noble Truths is to connect to, you see, in ancient time, Buddhism, they called three seals. And later, they called four seals. But these seals, it is somehow, it is distinction between when it's a Buddhist or non-Buddhist. You see, in India, ancient time, you see, there are so many Brahmin kind of religion and philosophy, one to another, you see, there's a similarity. So in a certain time, there's a Buddhist meeting where what is special about Buddhism, you see? There you have these three seals, And three seals, which is the ancient tradition, and later they call four seals, that's connected with the Four Noble Truths. So in that way, I was saying that as a Buddhist, that somehow Four Noble Truths, or three seals, or four seals, you see, need to be kind of at least to have some ideas. So now Four Noble Truths, you see, basically it is to connect with what is the samsara, what is the nirvana, you see. And then samsara and the nirvana, how to kind of realize that if one is not really know what samsara was, then there's no way to understand what is the nirvana. And so in Four Noble Truths, first you see you have Duhkha, and cause of Duhkha, you see, which is to connect with the samsara, you see. They're telling about what samsara was. And then third one is the nirvana they're telling about, which is the kind of beyond, If you kind of go beyond of the samsara, then that is the nirvana, you see. So that means that if you don't, really know what is the samsara, then beyond, you can't go beyond, or you can't say beyond. If you don't know what beyond of what, you say. So that way, that basically, as a Buddhist person, you need to know somehow what is the samsara and what's the nirvana. So you see, Four Noble Truths, we can, first we can talk about samsara, nirvana, way about how the Four Noble Truths is connections. There you have, I just said, first two of the truths is connecting to the samsara, and the second is the what you call the result or nirvana, and then fourth is the path, which is the practice. How to get into the beyond. So now you see, this can be. We can talk about the samsara nirvana, and you can also talk about in our level, just our level of our mind, how this is connected with the samsara nirvana. You see, I wanted to try to explain both ways. So now, just generally, we talk about the samsara and the nirvana as Four Noble Truths. Example in Asanka and Maitreya, you see. There is one text called, Tibetan called Julama. Probably many people know about Julama. In this, about the Four Noble Truths, way of, how Four Noble Truths is about. They explain that is like, he's talking about if somebody has a kind of a sickness, some sort of not well, then you need to kind of give some medicine, and then you also to know about how this sickness is, where is the cause, caused by what cause, and so you can kind of try to not get into that cause, you can give up the cause. So and that way, telling that if you talk about the human beings, first we have to know about what is a dukkha was, That was more like we are not well, some kind of, we have some sort of sickness or whatever. This is just picturally speaking, that doesn't mean we are sick that way. But then, if she's a sick person, then first you have to know you are the sick. And then you have to, go to the doctor and asking, what kind of a cure, what to do. They need some medicine. And that is more like a, practice, path, which is number 4 of the Four Noble Truths. And now, this sickness has got a cause, where you try to not to get into that, So, cause needs to be kind of, you reject it, you need to give up that cause. So that is the second of the Four Noble Truths. And then now you take medicine, to recover the sicknesses, and that is the number, what's called 4th of the Noble Truths. And then you get a kind of recover, and then that is the result, which is the, number 3 of the Four Noble Truths. And that way they are explaining in the Julama how the Four Noble Truths way of presenting by the Buddha. Now, first the dukkha. Dukkha is very often translated to, at least the English word, is suffering. You see, that makes a lot of kind of misunderstand. Because English word, if you say suffering, suffering is, people are suffering something, So we can't say everybody is suffering. But the dukkha, what we're talking about, that dukkha is all sentient beings, we are in dukkha, It doesn't mean that we are all in suffering that way. But example, in at least we can find in ancient text where what dukkha was. There's 3 dukkhas they are trying to explain. You see, one kind of very broad way of talking about the dukkha is all kind of dualistic way of existing. Whole kind of our body, whatever we kind of normally we think exist as, we call it compounded existence. It has cause and it has effect. It is a kind of law of the cause and effect. Into the law of the cause and effect, and that is a dualistic nature. See, that is the broad sense of the dukkha they're talking about. So that way, it doesn't mean that dukkha, just like suffering, normal sense of suffering. And second one is they called, if I translate in literally, in the Tibetan words, it is sounds like changing the dukkha, which means that all what we talk about the pleasures, whatever we talk about the pleasures, they call it changing the dukkha, which they explain that is we call it pleasure, but it's not final peace, What is the final peace is if you have kind of like a peace as much as you have, then
then you have much more peace. Example, if you put in kind of percent, if you have 20%, 100% peace, and then it's much more peace. And if this peace was, 10% is a peace, right? With that 20 and 100 becomes another peace, then it means that it is not genuine peace. So that way they called all what we called pleasures, they says it is changing the peace, changing the changing the what you call the dukkha. Which means that, example, if we are, thirsty, if you are hunger, thirst, then that is the kind of, well, some ways it is, unpleasant ones. But when you get some drinks and when you get something to eat, you have a pleasure, which means that this first kind of unpleasant, which decrease, it changed, it changed. That was what we're talking about, pleasure. And same as if you say a place where it is very hot, then you go into the cool, you say it's very, pleasant, very peace. And so that is because of before you have this kind of very hot feeling, it is reduced. So then we talk about it's a pleasure. But like all that, you see, if you stay in the cool for a long time, and then you feel suffer, And if you want to drink much more than you need, you get suffer. If you eat much more, then you get suffer. So if it's a genuine kind of peace, then if you put 10%, 20%, 100%, it should be more and more peace, you see. Any kind of what we have, experience of the pleasures, and they say it's not genuine pleasures, But still, you see, that is one of the dukkha they're talking about. They are not talking about it is, how to call it, the normal way of thinking of suffering. You see, it is talking about the pleasures. And then third one, what dukkha, that was the normal problems they are talking about. People can have, any kind of, problem, physical problem, mental problem. You can have a lot of, sufferings, and that is the kind of that they call the suffering of suffering. Tibetan is translation, more or less. More or less, you can say dukkha of the dukkha. You see, so this is a double dukkha. But anyway, if you look at it that way, that basic of the dukkha, that is the, you see, everything which is the compounded existence, you see, that is dukkha. And the third one is our pleasures, and then other one is what we talk about, normal sufferings. So, first noble truth with the dukkha, we're explaining, there's 4 ways of explanation generally. You see, each noble truth we have a 4, so there will be 16, and that is you find in Dhammakirti's text called the Brahmana. In Brahmana, they talk about 4 noble truths, which is 16 ways of to understanding of the 4 noble truths. Yeah, first, what we're talking about dukkha. You see, dukkha explanation is one is the because of this existence, compounded existence, so it is momentarily exist. Normally they call it transitory nature. You see, transitory nature doesn't mean that you see, one day it will break down. One day it will die. It's not that way, but it's a momentarily existence. You see, it has connect with cause and effect law. I'm talking about the cause and effect law of the dualistic nature. It's because of the cause and effect, you see, it has a movement of the changing. There's very simple ones, like a plant. If you say a plant is growing, you see, it has a cause and effect, law of the cause and effect. Because everything is a law of cause and effect, but plant you can see much easier. So, example, in a plant, when it's kind of springtime, it grows, and until you see autumn, if you look at how it is changing nature, you see it doesn't change like month to month, just like that. It changes day to day, it changes hour to hour, it changes minute to minute. You see, even much faster than it changes. You see, in every moment it's changing. You see, when it grows, it needs to have the changing nature. So a plant you can see, even in the West you can see, you can make photos. I have seen some pictures of the movie pictures, they photograph a long time and then showing the very fast, growing, you can see. It's every moment it's changing. But in that way of changing is connecting to because of it's a compounded existence. It's connected to the cause and effect nature. So cause and effect nature to our body and connecting to anything, you see. Even people knows in the West, you see, that our body cells has been kind of completely changed during, I don't know, during 20 years, or I don't remember, something. Completely new cells are coming. You see, somehow we have got a new body, So that way there's a movement, kind of moving, kind of constantly movement of the existing nature, which is they called transitory nature. Transitory nature is not just a symbol that way. It's connected with, even in Western science, we can make connections, way of understanding, and Buddhist way of understanding. So, you see, from this transitory nature, momentary existence, then they talk about, you see, it's not a peace, Peace is a kind of unity nature, and it doesn't have kind of, like generally people knows that everything exists. You need to have some sort of positive, negative. You see, need to kind of balanced, you see. Like you can say male, female, or positive, negative things, you need to be kind of balanced. But anyway, at least even people can understand in our body, you see, even the body, you see, we have a lot of those kind of certain things what we need, which is even it becomes too much, it becomes a problem. So you need to have other kind of in the body produced to kind of not too high up. They need to kind of, there's balancing between all the time in our body, and the same thing, all kind of living organism. They have this balancing, and also in the universe itself. They have this positive, negative, or masculine, feminine. You see, they have this need to balance. Which means that if you go, one is too high up, other one trying to, put down, you see. So this is by the kind of, by what you call the universal law, that cause and effect law, where they have this kind of try to make a balancing nature. So this balancing nature, transitory nature, is not a peace, Some ways, of you can say it's more like a fight, you see. If one is too much, other one has to put down. In some ways it's like a fight nature. So that means that from the transitory, they talk about the dukkha, Second, I said that dukkha, there's 4 ways of telling. You see, one is the first one is the transitory, and second called dukkha again, you see, name of the dukkha, which means it's not a peace. So now next one is called selflessness, you know. That is one of the problems, you see. In you see, I've met quite a few people in the West, you see, non-Buddhist people. The selflessness is, you know, is some, you know, kind of, they see it as a negative. Because, you see, some they believes there should be ego, you know, and something one can, you know, to hold on, you know, to be somewhere. So they believe that, anyway, they think that in Buddhist they are kind of rejecting that self or, you know, ego. And so somehow, you see, one has to see in generally what does Buddhism talking about, you know. The translation called selflessness sometimes, you know. So if one is just thinking self as a, you know, and generally certain ideas, and then they believe Buddhism telling about without that self, you know. So you have to see what Buddhism talking about, you know, selflessness. This once I had a conference in USA with one philosophy professor who has written a book about the selflessness of Buddhism, which is not really, you know, kind of accepted. It's not nice. And so I was talking to him as what he thinks Buddhism is talking about, the selflessness, you know. So I was telling what Buddhism is telling about what self, which is not there, what self, you know. Of course, Buddhism believe we are here, you know, everybody's here. I'm here, you are there. I mean, they don't kind of reject, you know, and, me and you, and they don't reject, you see. But somehow, you see, that selflessness is that, like what I mentioned before, everything what we are exist, it is the compounded existence. It is a transitory nature. There is no self, which is the kind of, how to call it, standing there all the time, which is not changing. Maybe we can say static, you see, which is somewhere inside ourselves, maybe. There's somewhere self as in a static, not changing, not moving, no cause. So if one believes there is a self like that, you know, that Buddhism is rejecting. You know, Buddhism doesn't believe. You know, everything is connected with the cause and effect. Everything is kind of transitory nature. But out of that, you know, as in the samsaric, dualistic nature, then there is no kind of such existing by itself. You know, no connection anywhere. So normally, you see, I used to say that, you see, self is connected with 5 skandhas. You know, and that's generally Buddhism they're talking about. 5 skandha is to describe how, you see, living sentient beings, you see, how we are, you know, kind of exist. You know, like example, if you explain something, what is this, and this is made of this and that, you can explain it. So that way in Buddhism talking about, you know, kind of being, living being, you see, then this 5 togetherness, and then we are living being. So if one is a kind of example, one of them body, and another one is you see, feeling, and kind of understanding or discrimination. And then we have the samskara, which is more like something sounds like compounded. And then you have the last one is mind, you know. Yeah, this mind is one of the also problem, because in the Western, when they think about the mind, and when in Buddhism they call it Vijnana. They are not really exactly the same understanding. But anyway, we have these five together. And so if you want to find more, inside of that, which one is me, then you can't find. You see, it is just five together, makes you. So therefore, there is self, which is not compounded and which is not transitory nature, independently existing by itself, oneself. That is what Buddhism is talking about, non-existing of self. So now, number 4 was we have, believing also ourselves as, I said, some ways that normally what we believe, you see, we believe that we are not transitory, and we are not, as we talk about this kind of unpeace nature, and we are not a kind of compounded existence, like compounded as 5 skandhas, We also believe ourselves is independent existence. And then on top of that we believe we are kind of pure, If you are not that, if you are not transitory, and kind of we are not a kind of unpeace nature, and we are not compounded, then we became more or less like a peace, like a nirvana, you see. So somehow, of course, we don't believe ourselves in nirvana, but we believe ourselves is somehow, some kind of pure nature, you see. I'm not talking about pure as, Buddhism, they talk about, nature, mind, and all that way, that direction. But anyway, generally, we had some sort of believing. Then they called void nature, not void as, and Madhyamika talking about a void, but anyway, we believe something which is kind of, existing of completely pure nature. So somehow, to realize all that, Buddhism is trying to explain that ourself and everything is transitory nature and unpeace nature and the compounded nature. So that way we are not completely peace, not like a final peace. And that is what they are explaining. And so that means that final peace, it is beyond of the dualism. So somehow, beyond of dualism, you need to know what about the dualism, what it is, and what does that mean? It's a dukkha, So I don't have much time to explain, but now if you go to next to the cause of the dukkha, you see. Cause of dukkha is a bit connecting to that. I said we don't kind of realized all this transitory nature and this opposite of the 4. We didn't realize it, you see. So that way, kind of basically, we had that moha, which is also this is one of the problems. Is translation all the time they translate it as what you call ignorant, ignorant. If you say ignorant to just generally, it's a Western. Just if you're not a Buddhist connections, you see, it sounds like everybody is ignorant, ignorant means, generally it means something else. But in Tibetan word, if you translate it literally, it means not seeing. You don't see what it really is, That means that we have certain ways we are holding oneself, We believe something independently existing in ourselves, That is the basic of to keeping to the samsara. But of course, it's not that simple, That can be conscious level, it can be subconscious, unconscious, whatever you can say. It can be also universal level, you see. But you see, if you look at a universal level, a level of such kind of self-holding, and that basically create the whole, that the universe as a dualistic nature of the universe, And if that basic of the, you can say energy or whatever, of this holding oneself universal nature is changed, then becomes a nirvana, you see. So nirvana and samsara is also, I can hear, this Tibetan who was talking before, he said nirvana is another paradise, You see, many times people didn't really know what nirvana really was, and they didn't know what samsara was, and they have a nirvana idea is like a paradise, something. And you see, I can tell you a story. You see, once I have a student in Denmark, very diligent, and one day he told me that he was very ambitious, he has very ambitious something. And I thought that maybe he want to finish his studies and to get, I don't know, some kind of professor, whatever he want to, aiming to. But I said, what was it? And then he says, he was very much, urging to nirvana, he says. And then I said, nirvana, you are very much urging to. Then I said, do you know what nirvana is, what it is? Then he was thinking a little bit, and then he says to me that, well, I could tell him what it is. Then I said, first, I can't tell what nirvana is. It's very difficult to tell. But even if I could tell him what nirvana was, I don't think you won't like to go there at all. I said. He said, why not? I said, whatever you think, something fantastic. I said, that's not nirvana. So, you see, they had, generally we have a nirvana idea is, something else. And if you really tell us what is a samsara, and some ways maybe we are not interested to get out of samsara. You see, we want to be here, And so now you see, cause of the dukkha. It's generally they're talking about what's called karma, and then talk about what is the name? Mental. I think translation is mental defilement or something like that. Anyway, it's connecting to, most of them is connected to our emotions. You see, and some of them, of course, maybe in a Western way you don't call emotions, but many of them, like hatred and jealousy and all these different kind of our normal. They call it mental kind of defilement. And so these two, they talk about the cause of the samsara. So now you see cause also connecting to, I said, this self kind of holding, which is the moha. This is also one of the defilement. You see, they count it, and that of course Western you don't call it, emotions. But anyway, we have our mind. If you talk about our mind, we have many kind of mental kind of creation of the samsaric dukkha. And also not just samsaric dukkha, but also it can create our normal, our normal human life dukkha. More like I mentioned before. There's a, we talk about the dukkha of the dukkha, And somehow these things, I thought maybe I wanted to talk a little bit, because it can be useful for, if you talk about Samsara Nirvana, as I said before, that some ways that if you really tell us, then it doesn't, one thinks that it doesn't relate to our life. And so somehow they are related, you see, because of all this dukkha is what they're talking about. Dukkha, there's different levels of dukkha. And the cause of dukkha, there's many levels. And all the dukkhas are kind of not the peace ones, And all the cause of dukkhas are, you see, also producing one way or another is unpeaceful kind of producing. So that unpeaceful kind of our level, just as a normal level, you see, that is also connected with what we're talking about, Four Noble Truths, you see. So, you see, we talk about our level, you see. I said, you see, many of the, you see, our problems is connected with our emotions, what we have. And of course, in Buddhism, generally, you see, we are dealing with our mind. We are not trying to change an outer physical, you see, kind of outer, kind of technically, we can have more kind of pleasures. We're talking about the inner kind of development and to get that way inner peace, you see. So what is not, we are not getting inner peace, you see, that is the, you see, our emotions makes it, you see, one of the emotions. And where we get emotions, of course there's many, there's a root of the emotion which I said is deeply is connected with the moha. But also many other things. Top of that, we have a different kind of self-referent. I call it self-referent, You feel ourself, what way you are feeling of yourself. If you feel more, you're identifying with oneself is more kind of calm and more peace, and then you don't get so much emotion, you see. And if you are identified with oneself as very weak and very miserable, and then you can get also, you see, more kind of emotional, and problems. And where you get emotion is, you see, one of the things is our thinking, our conceptual. Our mind, also before, lectures, you see, from the Buddhist teachers has been mentioning that, you see, wisdom is a basic. And wisdom means that one needs to know, we need to know many things. Otherwise we can't know, we just go the wrong direction. So, also, you see, mentioned that our mind and our thinking, conceptual mind, is so busy, you see. If you have a more busy mind, then you have, you see, less peace in your mind. And many of our emotional problems, one way it is our conceptual mind, our thinking is making, you see. Of course, there's a reason why we think like that, you see. If you look at oneself, that when we think that is I get afraid of something, or this is dangerous or whatever, and you need to have your conceptually to think that, you see. If you don't think that way, then you don't get emotion, you don't get afraid, you see. So, emotionally, you see, is connecting to the conceptual. And this conceptual, we have different conceptuals. Some of conceptuals are, we need it. Some of conceptuals are wrong ones, which is, you see, basically there's certain reasons why you have wrong, And so, suppose if you look at the other people, some people, they get afraid of many things, They get suspicious of many things. And they think like that, Their mind is worked that way. Normal thinking was, there is a problem. There is many things against, oneself. Or there's a lot of fears for here and there, and, all that. They think like that, you see. Of course, there's a reason why they think that way. But this thinking makes you believe that way. So and then you get into the feeling, to feel problem. You get afraid, you get emotion, you get anger, you get jealousy, more than you need, you say. So all this is also you can see that one way is our kind of thinking, thinking. You see, makes. I'm not talking about normally thinking is wrong, but if you look at it, just give examples. One person who is very nervous all the time, it's one way the thinking is creating, you see, emotional. So one way we can say dukkha as in, you see, our level, you see, we have dukkha which we can work with, so we can have less dukkha. This dukkha is, what we have is mostly is our mentally. We can create the dukkha. And of course, normally when we talk about, you see, problems, what we got, we have a kind of mentally we have problems, we have physical problems, And generally people way of looking at, you see, you don't see the difference between mental problem and physical problem, you see. But you see, physical problems, you see, that is one of the way of Buddhism, that we talk about 18 dhadus, you see. 18 dhatu explanation is, you see, telling about how our senses are working and what senses, object of senses, what they are, So in that way we can see physical problems. That is, we got, a kind of certain ways of experiencing. But normally we're mixing up with the mental problem and the physical problem together. So sometimes I give examples, like, there's two persons who get hurt, finger by certain things. And if you look at the doctor is looking, how deep and how damaged, they both of them exactly the same, But it might be one is very much suffer and other one is not that much suffering, see? So you can say that, of course, there's a physical, but other one has, they put a lot of mental, suffering, mental problems. They mix with the physical problem. So that's why they suffer much more. So that means that we could have, even in physical problems, you see, if we change something in ourselves, mentally, we can avoid, you see, a lot of problems can solve. And also, you see, certain problems which is, emotionally, we are too much emotional, you can reduce those emotionals. So you have less problems in kind of mentally. So in that way we can say just in a normal our level, we just the normal level of dukkha and the normal level of the cause of dukkha, you see, we can try to reduce normal level of cause of dukkha so we can have less normal level of the dukkha. So now you see, one of the connecting to the Buddhist method, you see, as a path. You see, Buddhists generally, they're talking about to kind of understanding or to realization of, you see, one's own nature, And then from that, you see, in Mahayana Buddhism, they're talking about, great love and compassion. And then they're talking about avoid the nature. And all of this is connecting to, you see, some ways to connecting to the meditation. You see, if you use our normal mind, normal thinking ones, you see, you can't get all this different wisdom, knowledge to experiencing of as Buddhism is introducing. And that's why, as a Buddhist really practices, you need to practice to samadhi. First you have the shamatha, And then you go further, deeper kind of samadhi, you see. And which means that we need to use another sort of mind to get into the meditation, to get into the practices. And if you use our normal mind, as a thinking one, normal thinking one, you see, it doesn't really connect to what we are supposed to be meditating. So all this, what we talk about, void nature, or great love and compassion, or you see deep nature of ourself, and the transitory nature, and all that, you see, you need to have certain kind of meditative mind, Some ways I would say like intuitive mind. Intuitive mind you need. And normal mind are what we're using. That's not an intuitive mind. So especially this mind, what we use in very highly developed as a technological, rational culture. You see, the mind is not an intuitive mind at all, you see. So somehow we have to kind of connect to the mind, which is more peaceful mind, you see. When you get a peaceful mind, you can connect yourself more peacefully, and you can connect with surroundings and the world more peacefully, you see. And otherwise, how much we can say to how important of, love and compassion, important of this and that, you see. But what we are using, our mind, you see, we are not trying to, you see, we believe that our normal mind can use all that, you see. Our normal mind can't reach there. So that is also, I'm telling that basically, very beginning of the Buddhism, from the 1830s, you can see that different types of mind has a different object, you see. See, mind doesn't perceive, one kind of mind perceive anything, you see. It needs to have a special mind for special things. Like it's very simple things in Abhidhamma. They say, like, if you want to see, you have to use our seeing, senses. You can't use the hearing ones, And so our conceptual mind is only connecting to the conceptual reality. And it doesn't go further, you see. When we talk about Buddhism, how high, deep, all that, we are not talking about the conceptual reality. You see, we're talking about another kind of reality, another kind of deeper nature. Of course, another reality doesn't mean that it was somewhere else, but it is just here, just in ourselves. But we are connecting in another way, So in that way, I think the important part is, you see, some ways, like to get into the meditation nature of mind, like intuitive mind maybe, So I think I should make a kind of a conclusion now. That is, you see, I'm talking about the Four Noble Truths as Samsara Nirvana, as Samsara as, dualistic nature, and Nirvana as unity and non-dual nature. So now if you look at the dual to non-dual, you see, dual to non-dual is not that just turning the page, you see. If you're turning the page, you can just turn like that. But it has a long process. So on the way, you see, it's connected with our normal, you see, mind, problems, to have peace in our mind. This is on the way, you see. So that way we can say that on the way, you see, dual to non-dual, between that, we had also very much dual, very much separation. Dual means separation. And if you have too much separation, it means problem, it's a fight, you see. If you get more and more closer, more and more near, and you see, united, and then it becomes a peace, you see. So anyway, our normal life, our mind, you see, as more towards to kind of non-dual nature, you see. not too much kind of separation. You see, not too much kind of distinctions, and me and the others and so on, you see. So somehow to make kind of more peaceful nature. Then you get that direction of the, you see, like, result of the peace. And in that way you can do the practices as a normal level. And if you talk about more Samsara Nirvana ideas, then you have to be also much more going into deeper to samadhi practices. So that's just more or less I want to say. I say thank you for listening. Yes, thank you.